is their biggest induction into the Hall of Fame. And considering the fact that you've never inducted The Undertaker into the Hall of Fame, yeah, Sting is your biggest name. You're inducting in a Hall of Fame that less than 100 individuals have been inducted in over the years since 1993. We've never seen a bigger induction than Sting. I mean, yeah, we've seen the inductions of Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, possibly even in the future The Rock and many others who obviously were honored to the highest by WWE. But I mean, Sting's induction into the Hall of Fame. I mean, how long have we waited for this? Over 15 years. We waited 14 years alone just to see Sting show up in WWE and wrestle in their ring in front of millions of people on the biggest stage of them all, WrestleMania, where he was really nervous, where I don't blame Sting for being nervous. You know, you're going out in front of over 70,000 people wrestling against their biggest name, Triple H, someone who you've hated for years. Obviously, you're going to lose because WWE is not going to let World Championship Wrestling win one over on them on their biggest stage. But the thing is, in front of over 70,000 people, I mean, who's going to blame you for being nervous after having waited years to get to the biggest stage and the biggest honor of your life? And there are people who are saying that Sting's purpose ultimately to come to WWE was to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. That was somewhere in his contract. But I think a lot of this had to do, too, with how Sting wanted to slow it down after his neck injury. They said the neck injury wasn't as serious as what it was first when he, of course, wrestled in that match with Seth Rollins last September. The neck injury, the curb stomp, damaging Sting's neck, and then the power bomb, of course, Seth Rollins had damaged so many people with during his reign as champion. I mean, people have been injured by Seth Rollins because of that move so many times over. But the thing is, I think it had a lot to do with the neck injury, and a lot of people were saying that Sting is done. But I don't think Sting is done, even if he is being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and even with how things went for him last year. I think we haven't seen the last of Sting, and I think there are probably 2 or 3 more matches Sting could give us in the way of him coming away with the victory, which he would have to win. If he had a match with The Undertaker, say, this year at WrestleMania and the fall of the Fastlane, obviously the way it would have to go is Sting would have to be the one who wins the match to retire The Undertaker, and what would obviously be The Undertaker's final match, or the final match of both of these wrestlers. And there are these matches that Sting wanted that he's never had the chance to have with the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. We'd obviously probably see Sting versus The Rock before we'd ever see Sting versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. But again, you know, there are so many people that Sting has yet to create with that WWE aren't going to say no to him to if he wants to create with them. They're not going to pass up the opportunity of giving a Sting versus The Undertaker at some point, or Sting versus The Rock at some point, because they know they will make millions from the match of Sting versus The Rock or Sting versus someone like The Undertaker. It's got to happen. So that's why I think we haven't seen the last of Sting wrestling in a ring despite his injuries and the rumors that obviously come from the injury of Sting. A neck injury, yeah, is one of the more difficult injuries to rebound off of. We all know that from all the injuries that I've documented, like knee injuries and back injuries and shoulder injuries, very difficult injuries to rebound off of. Knee injuries in the circumstance of Seth Rollins keeping out until the summer of 2016. Really excited about that return. By the way, again, you know, Sting having a chance to create with some new superstars like Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler. Something I spoke on here earlier was one of the downfalls of Sting's run with WWE. But I mean, so many WCW alumni have come in and suffered the same fate. You know, you're expecting them to create with so many names, but they're never given the chance to create with names that you would want to see them create with. And that ultimately leaves a lot of people disappointed. And I'm ultimately disappointed that I didn't get a chance to see that. But who's to say that we won't see that? Because Sting could be one of those wrestlers that's inducted into the Hall of Fame and keeps wrestling in the way of a Hulk Hogan, who was another suggestion I threw our way of someone to induct Sting in the Hall of Fame this year. But I think the biggest question about all this is not what Sting's future is with WWE. The more that I think about it and bring us back to the fact of who we need to find and who Sting's going to be inducted by into the Hall of Fame, I think the biggest question is who is going to be given that honor to induct Sting into the Hall of Fame, something he's waited years to go into. Of course, the first inductee was Andre the Giant, and you're putting Sting on a list of names that includes the likes of Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, all names that have gone in before Sting. But with Sting going in the Hall of Fame with some of the greatest of all time, taking his place amongst the gods, I mean, with how many inductees we've seen induct some of the greatest of all time, even William Shatner and Arnold Schwarzenegger, someone has to induct Sting just as big or even bigger. And that's why I say it could be Ric Flair, it could be Hulk Hogan, it could be an endless number of individuals on a list that is yay long, probably about 30 or 35 pages in length when it all comes down to it, because there are so many people that Sting have both created with and have shared an incredible amount of history with, and that's why I throw in names your way like Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, which wouldn't surprise me none. Yeah, there is the suggestion of John Cena or Randy Orton inducting Sting into the Hall of Fame, someone who Sting has created with like Dolph Ziggler, but I don't expect that to happen. It would be pretty surprising to me if we did see Dolph Ziggler induct Sting into the Hall of Fame. Yeah, Dolph Ziggler said it was pretty cool realizing that Sting had come out to help him at Survivor Series, but can you imagine them going as far as to having Dolph Ziggler being the man to induct Sting? I can't see them going that far. I can't see them having John Cena or Randy Orton with how promising of a future they thought Sting was going to have with WWE and how they thought it was so cool having the chance to work with Sting. In John Cena's case, of course, he teamed with Sting on Monday Night Raw against Big Show and Seth Rollins. But even with how excited they were to work with him, and Randy Orton, of course, standing across the ring from Sting in an altercation with The Authority in 2014, I think the week before WrestleMania, the thing is, I don't think WWE are going to go that far because it has to be, again, like I reiterate things all the time, it has to be somebody who Sting shares history with. And right now, the only names that I see that WWE are able to pull out of their proverbial hat out of proverbially nowhere will be someone like a Hulk Hogan or a Ric Flair, regardless of how we feel about Hulk Hogan. I would also really appreciate probably a face-to-face at the Hall of Fame between Sting and someone who we'd probably wrestle down the road, because I still believe that we haven't seen the last of Sting wrestling. Because, I mean, you think about it from Sting's perspective. I mean, you've waited years to make it to the biggest company of all time, WWE, over 15 years. You haven't won in a major pay-per-view. You've lost matches to people like Triple H and the champion Seth Rollins at the time. You haven't won a match, so you obviously want to win at least one or two matches before you call it quits with WWE and hang up your ring attire. So obviously they're going to give Sting one career-defining moment. And if you remember back a couple of months ago, one thing that I was forcing the issue of was the fact that Sting had not had a career-defining moment since coming to WWE. Yeah, he sat on WrestleMania stage with Triple H and he lost in an incredible half-an-hour match that had the NWO and DX involved with it. I was really pissed off with the fact the NWO and DX got involved in the match the way they did. Here they come out, they look absolutely horrible being involved in this match, and then we wait 6 months after Sting loses to Triple H, which I was somewhat fine with. I didn't agree with the fact that Triple H had defeated Sting, because I thought Sting's first match ever in WWE, they should have made an exception and had him win, and that was bad enough. 6 months later, Sting loses to Seth Rollins. They didn't give him a chance to be champion at least once, even if it was for a month. You know, when you can give the title to someone like Goldberg over 12 or 13 years ago, you could give the title to someone like Sting. No doubt Sting would generate a lot of ratings and a lot of attention for WWE over social media. The internet would have blown up with conversation if Sting would have come away from the match with Seth Rollins without the injury and became champion, and would have went on to defend the title against some of the younger names in WWE, which is why I raised the issue of Sting never being given a chance to create with names like Dolph Ziggler and Ryback and countless others like Bo Dallas. Even if you put him in the ring with Bo Dallas, and how Bo Dallas wanted to make Sting into a Bo-Leaver, as he says, you know, with a catchphrase on his T-shirts, and how the fans are supporting Bo Dallas in the way they are, finding him to be one of the more entertaining. Even the New Day, you could have put in the ring with Sting. I mean, that would have been cool too, seeing Sting create with the tag team, Intercontinental Champions, people like Bo Dallas, Heath Slater, the Social Outcasts. I mean, there were so many people and so many legends like Brock Lesnar Sting could have wrestled with. And I think that that's why we haven't seen the last of someone like Sting, even though the Hall of Fame induction is bringing about these rumors of how Sting is finished. I refuse to buy into that, but I think it's so cool. At the end of the day, Sting is going into the Hall of Fame, and that's why I've thrown up so many video blogs on things like Sting's Hall of Fame induction, either that or the career-defining moment for Sting, which I really think he needs to have. He obviously deserves to have a career-defining moment. Being WCW and TNA champion is one accolade, but I mean, this accolade of being WWE champion and being their biggest name is an accolade that separates itself from every other accolade you could possibly ever have been given with professional wrestling. And I mean, some of the all-time greats have won championships for every major organization they have worked with. Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, so many people. But Sting has yet to reach the pinnacle of his career, and that pinnacle is being WWE champion or doing something that defines your legacy, that will cement it for forever. And I think that's something that's eluded Sting since coming to WWE, is something that will either solidify himself as the greatest champion of all time with one reign, at least as champion, or something that will solidify his legacy for forever by defeating The Undertaker or having these matches with The Rock, which I think there is no excuse as to why WWE can't give it to us, especially when we're chanting Sting and Undertaker, for Sting and Undertaker to have this match at a WrestleMania either this year or WrestleMania years from now, even if it is not for another 2 or 3 years. When wrestling fans are chanting Undertaker, it's obviously really obvious that in post-WrestleMania last year, everybody wants to see Sting versus The Undertaker, regardless of how the circumstances are played out for this match to happen. And one scenario that I've always brought up is the fact The Undertaker is frustrated over the fact that Sting is going in the Hall of Fame after The Undertaker had been there for years, done everything for professional wrestling, and here comes The Undertaker to challenge Sting for a match at WrestleMania to retire both of their legacies when The Undertaker feels he should be going in the Hall of Fame over someone like Sting. That would be perfect in the fallout of Fastlane this year, although it remains to be seen. But regardless of how things go for Sting, he is going in the Hall of Fame, and I couldn't be more excited over this announcement, which was first posted at the culmination of 2016 back in January or February, I do believe. And this has been a year thus far. We're not even past the halfway point of the year. We're not even a quarter into the year just about, and we have so much news. Bret Hart's cancer, Daniel Bryan's retirement, Sting going in the Hall of Fame, Nikki Bella's neck surgery, John Cena's injury, Seth Rollins' injury. So many people talking about this and that with professional wrestling. It blows my mind, and I don't think I'll ever be able to get over it. But one of the biggest stories of 2016, Sting going in the Hall of Fame. 15 years happening. We've waited for this, and it finally is becoming a reality, and that is so cool for every single person who ever